Okay, ready?
Sure, I am.
Okay. So first of all, welcome everybody. This is a short talk about our brand new poultry egg farm simulator. My name is Thomas Wittig, and with me I have Kelechi. Kelechi, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Hi, my name is Kelechi Odoemena, and I'm joining Thomas on this.
Okay. Are you still there, Kelechi?
Yes, I am, Thomas.
All right, good. So what we want to do is to do a walkthrough of the simulator and talk a little bit about the purpose of this exercise. And maybe I can start ahead. Kelechi, I guess you will also interrupt me and ask questions. So this is the interface of the or the website of the simulator, which is a web-based simulation. And you can see here it has 4 parts. So this part is the overview, where we talk basically about the charter for this mission. And this is the first mission in a series of learning experiences. So it's good to read the instructions carefully. But basically what this version does is there is, after the first week of running the simulation, there is an increase in the egg order rate. Okay, we'll come back to that later, but just keep that in mind. Also, I should say, if you scroll down a little bit, you see here 2 links. So here you have a link to the YouTube channel, and there's another one to the Facebook page for this project. So how does the simulation work? You basically get here to get started, which brings you to the decision tab. And here you see some sliders that you can move, and also some input fields where you can input some numbers in a, I would say, reasonable range. And here you also have some information about your bank account. There's another tab which shows some graphics here. I will explain them into much detail. And there's also a management report. So here you have 2 parts. You have some graphics on the top, and you have a table on the bottom side. So what is this simulation about? Let's go back to the introduction. This simulation is about running a poultry farm which is producing eggs. And specifically in this version, we are only focusing on egg production. So you have been appointed as the manager of the farm, and your charter is basically to keep the farm running, but also to grow the farm, increase the bank balance, of course, take some money out of the bank for your own life support, and of course, manage the egg production from the supply of birds and foods. Yeah. So how to play the simulation, and maybe we should play this through as in the first round. The simulation is moving forward by 1 week. So you're making a decision for the next week, then you press simulate, and the simulation is moving forward these 7 days. And then you can take a look at the dashboard and the report and see what happens. As I mentioned before, the first one, or I think the first 2 weeks are basically business as usual, so nothing is happening. But in the second week, or at the end of the second week, the egg order rate is increasing, so there's a change. And that is the purpose of this exercise. How do you manage that change given your objectives? No? So let's play a first round. Are we ready, Kelechi, for that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so in the first part, I'm doing nothing. No? Let me also explain a couple of things here. You can move the sliders, and you see that the input is moving here in a certain range. But if you, for example, say, I want to put in more than the 100, I could also say I put in 200. So I go directly into the input field. So that's important. Then there you see this little eye symbol here that gives you an explanation what these sliders are all about. Yeah, and you see we have not many decisions that we have to manage on this farm at this moment. Later on in future versions, we might have a little bit more complexity, but this is simple. So what I can do here is I can change the order rate, so how many birds, new birds I'm purchasing. I can also cancel some of the birds that I have ordered, but they are not yet delivered. And I can also reduce some birds. That means removing them from the production, so they're not eating the food anymore if I have too many birds, for example. In this simulation, we're not selling the meat of the bird, so this is a simplification. Then about food supply, in order to make sure that the birds are not dying, we need to feed them. So here again, you have a little bit information, what this slider is about. You can move the slider, and here you order the food in kilograms per day. Also pay attention to the units that are mentioned here in the tooltips. Here, this slider basically tells, or you can say, how much you want to take out of the bank account. So if you have a surplus of money that you don't need, you can take that out. That's completely your decision. Okay, in the first part, Kelechi, do you want to add something to this part?
No, not really. You've done a great job already.
Okay, so we'll get back to that here, but pay attention also to this part here. Here you cannot do anything. It's just for information. Basically, it tells you how much money, how many dollars or whatever you have in the bank. Accounts payable is basically the amount of invoices you have to pay, and accounts receivable is basically the money you will receive from selling the eggs. So that is flowing into your bank account. So if we do nothing, and I press simulate, the simulation is moving forward by 7 days. So you see here the time unit is 7 days. At this stage, the farm is in an equilibrium stage, which means that we keep on ordering 1,000. We have 1,000 eggs that are being ordered by our distributor, for example. We have an inventory of 1,000 eggs, so everything is cool. We have 1,000 birds. We have been ordering 11 birds per day on average, and our food inventory is also very stable. And we keep on ordering 200 kilograms of food per day. Okay, so nothing special here. We go to the report, and it says, this is the picture about demand and supply. That basically means how many eggs are being ordered, how many have been delivered. So this is also balanced. It's in equilibrium, and we have $100 in the bank. So everything is good. This is our result after the first week. And so going back to the decisions, if I change now something, or let's say I play the second week, I just play simulate. And here we see that on this day, so on day 12, I think it shows every second day here, but day 14, we suddenly have an increase in egg order rate. That means our distributor is asking us to produce more so we can sell more to the producer. At that time, nothing changed because we have not made any changes to our inventory. So we have the same number of birds, etc., etc. But also we forgot to order food on that day. So our food order rate, it dropped from 200 to 0. So that's actually not a good sign. Maybe the first thing that we should decide is how many additional birds we might need and to start ordering food again. So, for example, I could say, well, I'm going to order, let's say, like 50 birds or something, and I go back to our food order rate. I think it was 200, so we will order a little bit more. Let's say like 250 or so kilograms per day. We're not taking anything out of the bank. and we're simulating. And aha, okay, there's something happening now. All right, so first, I think let's go here. We have started ordering more birds. So that means the number of our productive birds is increasing. That means that we also produce more eggs. So here's one of the important assumptions. We are ordering birds which are ready to lay eggs. It's a simplification, but I think that makes our life a little bit easier here. And also, of course, we started to order food again, a little bit more than we had. Our food order rate is increasing. And note that there are 3 lines here. So the red line is the food that is ordered but not yet delivered. And the green line is the food that we have available. So we managed to balance that somehow. No? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happens on our management report? I think we have a little problem here. I just realized, so we need to fix that because we haven't paid out any income, and for some reason this is not recorded correctly. But let's pay attention to the other values. So here's our step change in demand. No? So suddenly we went to, I think this should say probably 1,500 or 2K. It's also a little inconsistency here, but that doesn't matter. And we're producing more eggs. So the green is basically the eggs that we deliver, and we're starting to increase or basically close this gap here. No? And our bank balance is increasing, so that's pretty good. Okay.
Cool.
What else? So we could maybe be a little bit more aggressive and say, well, let's increase the bird order rate, so to get faster to meet the demand. And we might actually order a little bit more food. So let's say like 300. No? So you see, we're not doing a calculation. This is more like learning by doing here, learning by experience. No? Aha, okay. So what happens here is basically we're increasing the number of birds. No? So we are now at 1,600 birds. Here you see how we have in 2 steps increased the rate of the birds coming in. And we have also managed to increase our food inventory. The blue line here in this chart says, ideally, how much food we would need. So that's kind of our management system. We know what the birds are eating, so we can calculate how much food we need. And unfortunately, not all the food is delivered yet. So that's why our food inventory is starting to decrease. No?
Cool.
All good? So the report says, well, we're coming closer to meeting the demand. No? So as a next step, we may want to slow down our birds procurement, our bird purchasing, no? And also our bank account is increasing nicely. Okay, so let's do that. Let's do one more round, and then we can stop and do a little explanation of some of the other values. So maybe we slow down to, let's say, like 40, and the food order rate, I think we should keep it high because we have, let's move that also a little bit lower. And we're not, for this simulation, we're not taking anything out of our bank. And so we do another round. Whoops, what happens here? We have produced more eggs than we could sell. So that's why there's a constraint here. I think in this period, we delivered some backlog that the distributor was prepared to take from us. But moving forward, he's only to prepare to buy 1,500 eggs per day. No? So what happens here? The order backlog is decreasing. So you see that we have order backlog basically means we have received orders and we haven't fulfilled them yet. And our distributor has a little bit of patience with us. Maybe he's buying 1 or 2 or 3 day old eggs. No? So that's fine. But our inventory is increasing. What happens here? We have slowed down the bird purchasing a little bit more, and the food inventory is rapidly decreasing. So I think we need to get much more, because here's one of the special effects in the simulation. When we're not feeding the birds correctly, they will first start to produce less eggs, and eventually, of course, they will die.
Wow, nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course. No? So that's part of the nature here. No? So we need to pay attention more to our food supply management, and probably more dramatically increase the food supply. Yeah. Okay, so this was let's say several weeks that we ran. We didn't do so bad, but I think you should play it yourself and see what is happening. Kelechi, what else do we need to show? Shall we take a look a little bit under the hood? What is the theory behind this?
Yes, but before we do that, can we take a look at the report section so that we maybe have like a more detailed view? Okay.
Yeah, so the report, that's also good. So this is by week, no? So after 7, 14, 21 days, how many birds we have, how much food, kilogram food we have in the inventory. You see that has been going down quite dramatically. This is the egg order rate. No? So we started out with thousands per day, but then our distributor said, oh, I need more of you, no? So 1,500. So we started to ramp up our birds. Here you see the eggs that are produced per day. No? That's the inventory. So how much eggs are going into our inventory. Bank balance is basically how much cash we have in the bank. Here you see the increase in what we have to pay in terms of the bills, and also what we receive in terms of the money from our selling the eggs. No?
Nice.
Okay.
So I've got two questions as we prepare to take a look at what is happening under the hood. And so it's like, what is driving the egg orders? Like, what's driving the egg orders rate? I see that it jumped from 1,000 to 1,500.
Yes.
And then the egg inventory. So what's the calculation? How many eggs does a bird produce per day or per week? So how did we get to that
so the egg orders, they're externally. No? So this is the challenge that we put into the simulation. We said, okay, the egg order rate is suddenly increasing. Let's see how we can manage to produce quickly more eggs. No? And you see that we were overshooting here a little bit, but now the number of eggs that we can actually deliver is let's say limited by what our distributor is going to buy from us. No?
Yeah.
Okay. Was that your question?
Yes, it is. So, I mean, I did get the answer that supply, or rather the demand, is an external variable. It's kind of like something that has been affected by.
That's the magic hand that we put in here. Yes, that's correct.
Cool.
Okay. So, I think it would be good to explain a little bit how does this work, right? And for that reason, I wanted to switch a little bit under the hood so you get a feeling how the farm is actually operating. So what we see here is what we call a stock and flow diagram. And it's basically, you could say, a digital twin of our farm. So this is a sector which is basically explaining our bird procurement. So here let's start here. These are the number of birds that we have. So we are adding birds. We call this a flow, an inflow of birds into our bird population that we have on the farm. And there are two outflows. One is removing unproductive birds. So after some period of time, they become old and unproductive. So we're removing them, and they have, let's say, a normal productive time. But this time can also be influenced by the feeding. In other words, when we are feeding them less and less, and when we don't have enough food, then their lifetime is decreasing, which means they're moving faster. So we have more birds dying. Huh?
Oh, nice.
But we can also remove some of the birds by saying, oh, we have too many, they're eating too much food, and we have way too much for the number of eggs that we can sell, so we can also reduce some birds. So this is basically what you see here, setting the bird reduction rate in our simulation corresponds to this slider here. So basically, this is the slider, the bird reduction rate. No? So if I change this slider, basically what that means is I'm changing this flow, I'm changing this valve. No? So more birds are flowing out of our bird population. No? Now, where do the birds come from? Obviously, we need to place orders. And here you see our decision variable that says, okay, we need to set how many birds we want to order. That means we're creating an inflow in the number of birds which are in transit on the way to us, so to speak. No? And so we deliver them, and that's how they become birds in our production, in our farm. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, we can also say that we want to cancel some orders. We say, oh no, we made a mistake. Let's not bring all the other birds that we ordered. Let's basically cancel the orders. So the bird supplier will not be happy about that, but okay, that's what we can do in this part of the simulation.
Oh, nice. Sorry,
yeah.
Thomas, I've got some questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that the variables on in color red are like policy variables. That's the variables that the manager can work with or
decisions. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so the decision variables. Nice. Okay, and just for the sake of maybe explaining this type of model, what type of a model is this?
We call this a system dynamics model. And what you see here is a stock and flow diagram. No? This is actually the very model that we built in order to produce the simulation. Yeah. So this is not only a graphic representation, but we did it in a way that we can simulate it, which means there are equations behind of these variables. I can take a look, for example, at birds and see how birds are in this simulation. They are crashing. No? So this was one of the earlier simulations I did for testing. Here you see at the beginning, everything is okay, but we didn't order the birds. So they are slowly, first slowly decreasing, but then they're decreasing very rapidly. Why? Because we're also not ordering food. And that's what's happening. If you don't order food, after some days, your bird population is going to be dead. No? So that's basically what this simulation says. So this is a system dynamics simulation. And you can see, for example, here, this is another variable, which is, we're not canceling any orders, but just to show you a little bit how this works, there are equations behind it, which basically tell us what is happening and how this flow is actually working. No? The other important information really is this is a supply chain, right? So here we have one part of our supply chain. And if you think about this simplified model, we have to deal actually with three supply chains. One is this part, which is the bird supply. And the other part is the food supply, which I'm going to explain next on the next screen here. And then, of course, the egg supply. So that's where we are provider in the supply chain. No? But the food supply chain, we are receiving food from somewhere. So we are setting the food order rate. And this is limited by how much food we can, how much money we have in the bank. No? So we can only order as much as we have cash in the bank. So we order food that is in transit, and then it's being delivered to our farm. And this is our food inventory. So delivering food increases the inventory, and feeding decreases the inventory. So feeding is the outflow of this inventory. And we can only reduce it by how much birds we have and how much they eat per day, right?
Okay.
Nice. So so this sector basically explains also when you order food, why is it not arriving immediately? No? You're not just taking a sack of food from your storage and pour it into the feeding area. You have to first order it, then it's in transit or being produced, and then you receive it. That's kind of closer to reality, no?
All right. And so, Thomas, I've got a question here before you leave here. Is there like a delay from food order to before they go into the food inventory?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So what we're showing here is a very simplified version. I don't want to show the entire complexity because that can confuse us, but you're absolutely right. There's a delay here. So the food is basically the food orders are received, and then after some time, the food is being delivered to the farm. And we do this in a continuous way. No? So it's not that we have, let's say, a truck coming every month or so. We're assuming here a continuous feeding. So here again, it's also in the first, let's say 14 days, we have a continued supply of 200 kilos per day. So let's say this is our just-in-time delivery. And since we did not order any food, our food supply is actually also going to decrease, which means less and less food is being delivered to us. Huh? Okay. So that's an approximation here. Yeah, a great question. Let's talk about the financial sector, and I have to warn you, this requires a little bit more detail than we have discussed here in the supply chains. But in the financial sector, we have a bit more complexity. So we have here our bank balance. That means we're making money, which means we're increasing cash. But when we're spending, our bank balance is decreased. So we have an inflow and an outflow. Here's one variable that we can decide in the simulation, which means how much money we want to take out. But the way we did this here is we can only take money out of the bank account after we have paid our invoices. Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's cool. So anyways, how do we make money? Well, we have here what's called a shipment value, which is basically means the number of orders, egg orders we have fulfilled. So how many eggs we sell times the price per egg is giving our shipment value. And you see there are two arrows. So the shipment value basically means we're adding revenue. So we're making money. And basically that accumulates our revenue over time. So we call this, again, this is a stock variable, which is accumulating, and this is the flow variable. In economics, people often confuse the two. So that's a big problem. And that's why we articulate them explicitly as a flow of money and a stock of money. So here's a flow of revenue. Here's a stock of revenue. Here's a stock of profit, contribution margin that we have made. How does this happen? Well, we're adding cost and we're adding revenue. So the revenue minus the cost is basically creating a profit contribution flow for our business. If we divide the accumulated profit to the revenue, then we get our profitability. Let's take a look at how this farm was doing in the first days. Well, there's let's say some profitability. I think we made like 32%, and then it was increasing because we basically didn't purchase any goods anymore. So the profit is remaining then at a certain level. Now, what else do we need to explain here? Maybe this arrow here that basically says the more money we take out of our business, the more accumulated income payout we will have. No? So that's the other variable. So what you see here, the bank account is basically the corresponding picture to that is over here in the bank balance. There you see you're starting with $100 or so, and you're increasing, and then it's flattening out. And as we were pushing for more birds, we have more in the bank balance. Or also, we ordered less food, so that means more money is flowing into, is remaining in our bank balance, so to speak. No? So that's how this whole thing is working together. And I think what we will do is we will publish some of these pictures for orientation, no? So that you know, for example, how the food sector, the food supply chain works, and how the bird supply chain also works. No? All right, that's the first version of the simulation that we have in mind. Back to the learning objectives. The learning objectives of this simulation is really to understand and how to manage this step change in demand. What we have in mind is to provide different learning experience. So for example, what happens if the demand is going down, or if you have a seasonality, or if you have, let's say, a very random price that you always have to interpret and make some decisions in how to manage your farm. No? So this is what is upcoming, I think, in future learning experiences. But what I'm really interested in for the first users of the simulation is what are your learnings and your insights and the key challenges to walk through this. No? Okay, what else, Kelechi? What else do we need to explain? I think that was...
yes, it was a great first introduction, because I believe like there are so many follow-up questions that we may not be able to address in this particular walkthrough video. So for instance, thinking about maybe in some future video, we talk about what if we were going to customize the model to suit our current farm condition. So like, I don't have $100 in my bank, but maybe $200, and I'm starting with like 50 birds, and I have 20 kg of feed. I'll need to like have those conditions fixed in this model, and then see how this model can help me make better decisions given my current farm condition.
Right. Yeah, that's a different starting point. You're absolutely right. What we wanted to do in this first version is to provide a little bit of starting help, and say basically we have a farm that is running, and now you come in as the manager, and the owner of the farm is taking vacation on the beach, and you have to manage the farm. No? So of course you could say, what happens, for example, if we start with 0 birds? No, and how would that work out? No, so here, for example, in this chart, we're not starting out with 1,000 birds, but maybe we have a startup operations. How could we manage to grow that farm? No, that's a different scenario. Also, for those in our community who have a farm operations, it will be good for future versions to basically set the parameters and say, okay, I have now so many birds, I have so much money in the bank account, I have so much kilograms of bird feed available. Let me start from there and see how I can manage to grow the farm. That's another scenario, of course. No? I think it's a different learning environment, learning experience, which we can provide with the simulation. No? But we're taking it step by step.
So Thomas, one thing I'm thinking of, like, I guess this is something that I could use like to interact with those who work on the farm, but like, can this report, the report that is being generated, be downloaded? The data generated, can it be downloaded?
You can download the chart here. No? So there's a function here to download the charts. You can go look at your report. You can also copy this to a clipboard, no? And basically take the data out of this. Yeah, you're right. You could take this and say, okay, this is my scenario plan, no? for this thing. I think what we are also interested in, Kelechi, correct me if I'm wrong, but for those who are playing the simulation, to be active in the community and also comment in the YouTube channel, but also in the Facebook page. No? So you can take the charts download it and post it to the Facebook community and say, hey, this is what I ran, but I ran into the following challenges. What does it mean? How can I get out of this? Or you could say, hey, I found a great path to growth, and here's how I did it. Here are my decisions that I made. And you can also, let's say, make a screenshot of this and post it to the community. You know? The spirit of this is we call this you see it down here, the Global Open Agri Lab. So our vision was to provide a learning platform so that we can provide different learning experiences. In this case, for example, how to grow an egg farm. No? What we also would be really interested in is some feedback on the simulation itself, where you think, okay, there's something not working correctly, or it doesn't fit to reality, because then we will go back to our engine here, so to speak, and add some more structure to the model. No? This is already very complex. What I'm showing here is just a fraction of the complexity, but we try to basically provide an easy to work simulation environment. No?
Great.
Okay.
So
that's good. I would say enjoy the playing, and please comment in the Facebook group. Also, please share the Facebook group, invite others in the community. I think this community is living from its contributors and the ideas and the engagement.
Great. So Thomas, I guess we need to inform those who are viewing that the link to this simulator is currently going to be shared in the description box, and it's live for you to try out and give us feedback. Right.
This is, and we will publish future versions or make some announcements how we change this version. By the way, I didn't mention one thing. If you, I think this is running for like 100 days or something. No? So you can play the simulation as often as you want by simply going here to the reset button. And if I press the reset button, everything is back to 0. Yeah. And also my dashboard is starting at 0. The report is starting at 0. So you can make several runs and run it as often as you want. So there's no charge, there's no limitation. The only limitation that we somehow created here was that it's only running for 100. One simulation run has a maximum of 100 days. Originally, the idea was to have a year, but we'll see if we can fix that in the next versions. Okay, so
Great.
Let us know what you think and how it helps you to grow an egg farm, an egg production, and support families or a community.